Mexico's GDP grew by 8% in 2019. In 2021, that growth was almost 6%. So there's no doubt that Mexico's experiencing an economic boom, and so is Texas. Experts argue that connecting Mexico and Texas by an Amtrak high-speed railway seems like a no-brainer. But is it? While some praise it, others point out the clear pitfalls a giant railway project like this will run into. It will either be a blessing or a curse, and there's only one way to find out which it'll be. So let's discuss it in today's episode of Built Up. Now, both sides of the Mexico-US border are in favor of a high-speed railroad that will be built from Austin, Texas to Monterrey, Mexico. The Texas Passenger Rail Advisory Committee, made up of elected officials and experts, is looking to connect the two large metropolitan areas with a passenger railroad like in the US. The Amtrak line that's running across Texas right now routes from San Antonio, goes up north to Austin and Dallas before continuing further up north. What they're trying to build is a high-speed railroad that extends further south instead of north. Ideally, the railroad would be 375 miles long and would cover two other major cities along the route, San Antonio and Laredo, before reaching Monterrey on the Mexican side. Earlier this summer, officials from both sides showed support for the project and even signed a letter of intent to develop the project. According to the governor of Nuevo León, Samuel Garcia Sepulveda, this will be a great opportunity for economic, tourism and industrial development. Now, the governor has been pushing this project relentlessly since 2021, and it's finally being discussed by both sides. This train is part of an international attempt to revive Mexico's passenger rail. Meanwhile, Texan officials like Andy Brown, the Travis County judge, point out just how much Austin needs to invest in new infrastructure projects if they want to continue the region's rapid growth and attract more investment. The Monterrey-Austin line will be the first train of its kind in the region. It would follow the example of the European trains that pass seamlessly through borders. But this is not something new. For decades, they've been talking about building a high-speed rail, which will be a part of a much larger network. Experts believe in this new push so much that they even formed the TPRAC committee earlier this year, with representatives from both sides. Now, don't forget to subscribe if you like the video so far. One of the first and clearest benefits that this project will introduce is the easing of traffic congestion on the I-35 highway heading south in Texas by extending the rail network further south. But even though it could be a little costly, it will inevitably improve international connectivity. If the railroad becomes successful, then the US can actually begin its transition from Asian manufacturing to Mexican manufacturing with a center in Monterrey, Mexico. The city is in the middle of an economic renaissance, which will only grow with the completion of this railroad. Thankfully, this is just the beginning. Mexico's new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has a 5-year plan to improve the nation's connectivity to the US. In fact, Monterrey and Austin are just two of many major Mexican and US cities that will be part of this broad network. As time progresses, more and more major US cities will be connected with a broad number of Mexican cities. In fact, the new president has vowed to build approximately 1,850 miles of passenger rail. Why did she choose those specific numbers? Well, it's because the previous president, López Obrador, built only half that railroad length. These rail miles will be spread across 3 passenger train lines that will connect Mexico City with other cities on the other side of the border. In addition, all will be high-speed electric trains that could reach astounding speeds of up to 100 miles per hour. The first passenger line will extend from Mexico City to the border city of Nuevo Laredo. The line would measure 680 miles in length and reach a price tag of $22 billion. The second high-speed passenger line will connect Mexico City to Guadalajara in the west. The total cost of the project will be much lower than that in the US. However, even though this railroad will seriously help Mexico and Texas, there are some serious challenges the railroad must overcome if it wants to be successful. The first clear obstacle that this Austin-Monterrey Amtrak line would face is funding. According to the US side, Texas will need to cover exactly 20% of the railroad, leaving the federal government to cover the remaining 80% of the project cost. Now, if you're thinking, well, that seems like a pretty sweet deal, it is. But there's a much bigger problem here. Those 20% amount to $300 million because the entire cost of the project is close to $1.5 billion. and the county will need to come up with this money locally before they can even hope of getting the federal government involved. Remember, we aren't even talking about the Mexican side. The country will need to cover all necessary expenses to build their side of the project, without any help from the US. That's why TPRAC is writing a letter to the Texas legislature, hoping they could front the $300 million through a rail fund in order to get federal funding like they intended. Governor Garcia, on the other hand, is urging the US federal government to fund the entire project, since a passenger rail like this would provide immense economic and trade value for the states. But even if they could somehow wave a magic wand and find the money from the federal government, they will still need to contend with Union Pacific's control of the rail line currently existing between Austin and San Antonio. From experience, the government knows that Union Pacific doesn't like to share its freight rail lines with passenger trains. This passenger rail, part of the 3 bigger lines envisioned by the Mexican president, might require moving the existing lines and making way for new tracks. But that would mean loss of freight line, and that's something Union Pacific doesn't like to do. After all, any disruptions to their tracks means less profit for the company. If they do share the freight lines, it's because they have a separate freight bypass. This brings us to the second problem, the Beast. La Bestia, or the Beast, is a train that smuggled approximately 500,000 illegal migrants to the US in a single year, riding atop the freight train in secret. If Mexico's passenger railroad is to be any different from La Bestia, then they need to address these challenges head on. Then again, this is going to be a passenger train, so including a few more checkpoints along the route will solve this problem. Still, experts point out that everyday workers might not even use the railroad. That's because most travelers prefer using buses, cars, and planes to reach their destination. So they could spend billions of dollars building a new railroad that no one would use. Now, when Texas and Mexico solve all of these problems, they'll gain access to the $66 billion of funding the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021 designated for rail projects across the US. However, as we said, to access these funds, they'll need to cover at least 20% of the funds. If they overcome these problems, then it's very likely that the 2 states will achieve. While this project, like any other of its nature, might have to deal with a lot of challenges, the benefit, if and when done correctly, will be immeasurable for both Texas in the US and Mexico. There will be a true symbiosis of cultures, especially since both states recently signed a memorandum of understanding. In March 2024, TAB and the Mexican state of Nuevo León signed the memorandum after the Mexican state became a true epicenter for job opportunities. According to statistics, Nuevo León is responsible for 3/4 of Mexico's nearshoring activities, with around 4,500 foreign-owned companies. Giants like Lenovo, Tesla, IMB, and even Amazon have moved part of their operations to Nuevo León. Since Texan companies need Mexican manufacturing, creating railways that connect these 2 countries will not only drive collaboration and cultural exchanges between the countries, but will also give workers a cost-efficient way of commuting. Let's just hope that both Texas and Mexico will see the benefit as well, and collaborate on such a monumentally important project. But what do you think? Will Texas and Mexico finally see eye to eye and build the much needed railway, or will it be another billion-dollar dud? Let us know in the comments down below. Now, here's another video mega project enthusiasts enjoyed watching. Bye for now.